Hello, good morning. Welcome to Hekate's Crossing as we continue our exploration of the Arthurian Tarot. Okay, so of course if you're on Ko-Fi, you have the preview of this for some time before it's made public, of course. So you do get that little bit of preview, should I say. It gives you a chance to sort of look at it before I make it public. So let's have a nice sort of cleanse energy. Let's cleanse away as we're processing this energy. We're sort of allowing us to feel like we can get the messages through. We're consecrating ourselves. We're feeling like we're in a good headspace to get the answers that we need as we move through this. Okay, so I am doing the complete Arthurian Tarot. I'm doing the Hallowquest. Now, I know it's moving into winter here, but I'm still doing the autumn. I'm still doing the Grail Hallowquest. So the Hallowquest of the Grail. So let's have a look. We're up to actually doing, we're also including Major Arcana in here. And so we're actually doing the card number 16, the Spiral Tower. Okay, so let's take a nice deep breath. Okay, let's take a nice big breath as we look at the Spiral Tower speaks. I spin the wheel of change. I break down what is made to last forever. Feel the oscillation of the aeons and open yourself to changes ahead. I will transfigure your soul if you let me, or I will shatter your limited perceptions with a searing shock. Okay, so the Spiral Tower is a place of changing where all things are broken and rewrought. It reminds you that you are not central to the quest, that there are wider cosmic issues at stake, that you are but a seeker on the road. The cycles of nature often appear destructive to human perception. It is one of the most humbling of experiences to realize our part within the microcosmic patterns of the ages may be a smaller one than we first thought. The Spiral Tower acts as a retort to channel our energies into a new phase. There is a close connection between Grail 7 and the Spiral Tower, which you have perhaps discovered in your meditation. Oh, let's have a look at the Grail 7. Now, we did look at that in the last episode, so let's grab that. Grail 7. So let's have a look. Just take me a second to get through there. Grail 7. Okay. Grail 7. Okay, so let's have a look here. Let's look at these two cards. Didn't realise that I needed to do that. I didn't read it through yet, so let's have a look. So we'll be looking at this. Okay, let's have a look. There is a close connection between Grail 7 and Spiral Tower, which you have perhaps discovered in your meditation. Study the differences between them very carefully so that you will not be confused by other similarities. Remember that although the physical tower of the Spiral Tower is stricken by lightning, the crystal spire of changing remains eternally. It is a mill of heaven which appears in many Northwest European traditions emblematic of the cosmic axis. Only when you have personally experienced a complete round of its wheeling changes can you say that you have lived your life to the full. So are you having a look at these two cards here? Grail 7. So Grail 7 to me is that sense of having to choose wisely. But let's have a look. At the moment, you've got a lot of choices above you. Maybe you're being forced to make a decision, to make a choice in the direction that you're moving into. And so you've got that sense of things being wobbly. So let's have a look at Grail 7 in here. So let's have another look at what the Grail 7 actually says. Okay, in the waters of a lake, a fortress is reflected as a fairy howl. A cup of silver stands upon the near bank. When Percival fails to ask the Grail question, he retires to bed in the Grail castle, but wakes to find the place deserted. Similarly, when Gaelid goes to the Castle of Maidens, he is tested. When he refuses to aid the maidens of that place, he discovers that they are not mortal women, but phantoms. Self-deception, illusion, an overactive imagination, unrealistic fantasies, and glamour of delusion. Reversed, clear vision. So what is deluding you is the question here. What is deluding you? You've got some choices to make, you've got some decisions, everything sort of seems like an illusion, you're not quite sure in where you're going and what direction you're moving into. So what is deluding you? What's stopping you from moving ahead? What seems to be out of reach? Interesting. So let's have a look at the spiral tower. I love looking at these in the book. It just sort of gives you go back and have another look and have a thought about, what's going on here. Okay, lightning shatters the tower upon a high tor, but the spiral tower remains. Although the Round Table Fellowship falls apart, the internal order indicated by the zodiacal signs continues to glow within the land. An owl flies with its prey. Radical change is part of the soul's evolution. And so you've got here, I'm not going to go through and read the whole thing. The keywords basically are shocking change, the realization of limitations, liberation from outworn concepts, phases or behavior, humility, natural forces, expulsion of poisons, loss of cozy security, transfiguration, self-awareness. Reversed is no change, crisis threatens fruitless hanging on. Questions: what is breaking down or dysfunctional? What needs to go? And what suddenly realization strikes you? Okay, that's interesting. That's something to really think about as we go through the spiral tower meditation. So let's take a nice deep breath. Close your eyes. Get yourself nice and calm and nice and relaxed. And feel yourself looking at the tower card. Okay, you're looking at the tower card at this time. Okay. But you're also looking at Grail 7, so you're looking at the cups, 7 of cups. If you're not using Arthurian Tarot, you might be using a different deck. Make sure you have the 7 of cups and the spiral and the tower card out. Okay, so Grail 7 and the tower. Okay, so here we go. Look out of the window of the Grail 7 and find that another reflection is revealed. You're actually standing... Okay, so find yourself in the moment. Okay, so you're in the 7 of Cups card, right? And you might be looking ahead at the choices that you actually have ahead of you. You've got your cups, you're looking ahead at which direction do you actually need to go into. Okay, so here we're going. We're looking out the window of the Grail 7. So if we're looking at this card in particular, so we're going to take a moment and we're going to actually look out of the window of the castle, okay, out of the Grail 7 castle, and find that another reflection is revealed. Okay, and suddenly you realize you're actually standing before the spiral tower upon its striated hill around you. The land makes a great amphitheatre. Okay, so you're standing in the tower. Now this is before the explosions, before everything's going on. So a good card would be the before tarot. Maybe you do the before tarot, before the explosions, before the stuff going on. Okay, so it could be a way to do it. Okay, so number 2. So what you do is you're walking into the tower. Ascend the spiral tower and you come out into a high central observation room. So you go out to the top. Into its white emptiness, wings an owl bearing a mouse in its beak. As soon as it drops the mouse, the L becomes a white-clad fairy woman. Okay, so let's take a minute, take a breath. Okay, so you've walked up the steps of the tower, and you're into the high central observation room. You're right at the top. And into its white emptiness, an L arrives with a mouse in its beak. Okay, now you see the L drop the mouse. Okay, and now the L becomes a white-clad fairy woman of more than just human stature. Now the mouse, her prey, has become a sleeping soul, which rises and floats up the spiral staircase above. So there's more staircase above the observation room. Okay, so now we've got the owl woman. She starts to speak. Okay, and now she tells you that this is the tower of changing. Okay, there's things that are changing at this moment. This is the tower of changing. And that she brings souls here who need to be liberated from stale patterns. So when things are stagnant, things are, if you're feeling very stuck, there are repeated patterns that seem things that you keep repeating, your patterns, your bad habits, those sort of things, and it's time to be liberated from those stale patterns. And that you have come here inadvertently, but you're also welcome to bring change into your life. Are you ready to accept those changes? Are you ready to make those changes? Okay, so now you're looking over the land. You see the cycles of cosmic time endlessly revolving. Okay, so now it's time to lay 12 cards in token of the year you have just lived through. As you do so, the many influences upon your own life become plain to you. Okay, so this is quite a strong one here. So there's quite a lot going on here. So you've got this spiral tower. We've looked at the the Grail 7. We've transformed. We've made the transitions. We've released all those stale patterns. We've been shaken up a little bit. It's really asking us to now look at the last year that we've lived through. So many influences upon your own life become plain. Okay, so let's do this. Now, I'm not going to be able to lay them out in this case. As you can see, I will take a photo and I will leave this on Ko-Fi. Okay, so I will leave this on Ko-Fi as a member. And the Ko-Fi members can get that to start with before I release it to the public. So I do want to make sure that my Ko-Fi members do get a little something before I release it out into the open. Okay, so that's those two cards there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put them back. No, I'm going to leave those two cards out. I don't feel like I need them. Okay, so card number 1 asks, who am I? Who I am. Okay, so who I am. Now remember, this won't be in order. This won't be laid out. Okay, so okay, that's the first card. Who am I? Who I am. And I got Stone 7. Now, Stone 7 to me, 7 of Pentacles, it's about someone who's always trying to bring in what I want into my life. There's a lot of reflection going on. Feels like I've got a lot of contemplation, a lot of reflection, reflecting where I've been and where I'm headed. That's who I am. I'm always reflecting on what I'm doing, where I'm going. I'm doing a lot of meditation. That seems to be very, very thought about who I am. Okay, number 2, how I've handled my resources. Okay, how have I handled my resources? How have I handled my resources? Through meditation, reflection, self-knowledge. I think there's a lot of learning going on there. I think there's a lot of discovery, a lot of isolation going on. I've learned a lot about, that's how I've handled my resources. The next one is the kind of choices I've made. The kind of choices I've made. Okay, the kind of choices I've made. Now, I can't lay them out like I would if I was in a big table or I was outside of my own space, but I'm just doing the best I can. I don't think it really matters how you lay out the cards. I mean, the spread's really cool, but let's just use the positions. The kind of choices I've made. Okay, the kind of choices I've made. And it talks about the sun. Okay, I feel like exposing things, bringing things out in the open, knowing that each day is a fresh day. I think I've done a lot of that. That's how I've handled my resources. Okay, the influence of my home life and environment. The influences of my home life. Whoops, I just dropped the cards. That was clumsiness more than anything. So let's just pick those up because that's a big pile there. Oh, that was me being clumsy. My hands just separated. Okay, let's just make sure I put all the cards. Right. Yeah, I'm not going to include all those in a reading. So let's just put them back in. Because we're just pulling one card here. So, oops, and it is the influence of my home life and environment. Okay, so this is the influence of my home life. Okay, the influence of my home life and environment. The influence of my home life and environment. Oh, there it is. Grail 9. Okay, with the Grail 9, I feel like things are happening behind the scenes. Things are cooking. Things are developing. There is that wish fulfilled. I do feel like things are happening. And I think that's the influence of around my home. I do feel in my environment is that things do happen. Things do get done. Things do cook. Okay, the way I've expressed myself. The way I've expressed myself. The way I've expressed myself. Remember, as I do this, this is just my initial thoughts as I look at each card, and then I can go back and have a look at the book and see if there's any other information that comes out. I can have a look at the images and see if anything stands out when I do that. But at the moment, it's just these are just my first initial thoughts as I look at the card. Okay, so the way I've expressed myself with the Spear 7. Ooh, standing up for my own beliefs. There might have been some conflict. Conflicting, standing up for my own convictions. I think that's the way that I've expressed myself is I've stood up for my own convictions. I've stood up for what I believe. Ooh, that's an interesting one here. The way I've worked. Ooh, this is the way I've worked. Okay, the way I've worked. Let's have a look at this. Okay, this one down here somewhere. The way I've worked. Bear 9 with perseverance, with keep going, survivor. I think it's just keep going, being a survivor, not giving up on, you know, the way I've worked, is that I've done what I needed to do. Okay, the kind of relationships I've had. Well, this is going to be an interesting one. The kind of relationships I've had, and I can see this right here somewhere. Kind of relationships I've had. Now I got Sword Maiden. So I think it talks about honesty. When I talk about the Sword Maiden, I'm getting that sense of honesty, integrity, sort of energy here. That new beginnings, that fresh look, that innocence look, that look, or the innocence expectation of the truth, expecting things. And that's how the kind of relationships I've had that have been honest as I could be. You know what I mean? Okay, so the legacies I've reaped from actions committed during last year, you know, before this year. So the legacies I've reaped from actions committed before this year. So things that I've actually done, what are the legacies that I've reaped? So what have I left behind this year? That's interesting. Stone 3. Stone 3 to me is like 3 of Pentacles, is that whole thing about that sense of a creating something. It's been a year of creating something, working at something, working with others, supporting others. I feel like there's a lot of support going on, creating energy. Interesting. Okay, so how I've fulfilled my personal code. How I've fulfilled my personal code. How have I actually filled my personal code? Let's have a look. This is sticking out here. Stone 4. Okay, I get a sense of creating some stability, some foundations. Having a look at a sense of looking at what am I holding on to, what do I need to let go, what have I put aside, what have I hidden, what have I put away. I fulfilled my personal code by looking at what have I held on to, what have I put away, what you know, what's important to, you know, what's a treasure that I've hidden, you know, that I've held on to. How have I responded to society? How have I actually responded to, oh, that came up straight away. How have I actually responded to society? And I got Stone 5. So I feel like I've sort of led others out of the cold, been there for others. I get a sense of supporting others in some way. I get a sense of, you know, being the one that sort of helped them. Maybe I feel like maybe I've done what I can to help those that I can. I've been able to help those that I can. I think that's quite strong. That sense of being led, you know, leading others into where they could be, so that they can be in control, that they can do what they need to do for themselves. I feel like I've helped try to guide people, to inspire people. Okay, how my aspirations have been reflected in the world. How have my aspirations been, oh, that popped out. How have my aspirations, whoops, got pulled right out of my hand. All right, let's have a look. Oh! How have my aspirations been reflected in the world? The Cauldron. Okay, the Cauldron is card number 14, and that is a sense of moderation, that sense of calmness, serenity. It's interesting. Things blending together emotionally. I think there's a lot of emotions involved, being reflected in the world. Ah, interesting. Okay, the part of myself of which I've been unaware, the part of myself which I'm unaware. The part of myself I'm unaware. Ooh, unaware. Let's have a look. Okay, Okay, interesting. We have 21, which is the achievement. I think there's a lot of things maybe that I've achieved that I'm unaware of in the way of helping others. You know, like I'm not always aware of those that I've helped, you know, the results. Maybe I'm not always given the results, the achievements that other people have achieved. And I feel like that's their cycle, their journey. And that's a lot of stuff that I'm not actually aware of in how I've actually helped somebody or stopped, I hope that I've helped somebody, let's put it that way, their achievements. I haven't seen how they've moved on in their life. And I might never know. And that's something I just need to accept. What an interesting spread. So card number 1 was who I am. Card number 2, how I've handled my resources. Number 3, the kind of choices I've made. Number 4, the influence of my home life and environment. Number 5, the way I've expressed myself. Number 6, the way I've worked. Number 7, the kind of relationships I've had. Number 8, the legacies I've reaped from actions committed for this year. Number 9, how I've fulfilled my personal code. Number 10, how I've responded to society. And number 11, how my aspirations have been reflected in the world. And number 12, the part of myself of which I've been unaware. Ooh, when you've read and evaluated these cards, the Owl Woman mixes them all together and dares you to consider patterns for the year to come. Ooh. Okay, so you can actually together, so she mixed them all back together, and now you've got to look at the year ahead. If you need clarification, ask the Owl Woman to draw 1 or 2 specific cards. Okay, so what you've done is you've done what's happened in the past year, right? And so now let's take a minute to really consider this. And when you're ready, I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to do this in a separate video, I think. I'm not going to do this today. I'm going to do this later on because I want to look at this again. I think it's about having a look at these cards that I've actually drawn. I'm going to sort of, if you're on Ko-Fi, you're going to get a little bit more of a breakdown, I think, about what I've done here. It's really for my members for the moment. Right, so when you've read and evaluated these cards, the Owl Woman mixes them all together and dares you to consider patterns for the year to come. You may wish to actually lay down cards for the year ahead now, or you can do this at a later date, which I'm going to do. If you need clarification on any of your cards, ask the Owl Woman to draw 1 or 2 specific cards to lay beside any card. The White Owl Woman then gives you a gift and you depart. Okay, so you're in this tower. You've spoken to the Owl Woman, White Owl Woman. You've laid out your cards. You've got a reading with some answers to some questions there. You're then taking a moment to sort of take a breath, deciding on whether you want to just reflect on what you're doing now and come back to the year ahead spread. And then you, and if you need any clarity, she's going to lay out some more cards. Now that you're ready to depart, the Owl Woman gives you a gift. You now leave the tower. You leave the tower. Okay, now that you've left the tower, you've gone through the transformation. You've gone through the changes, through the transitional stuff. You've been forced to things to be shaken up a little bit with the reading, and so now it's time to sort of stand on solid ground and look at the year ahead. You know, things are a bit shaky, a bit wobbly. You've just looked at things from the past. Remember, this is the past. You've got no idea what lies ahead yet. You haven't looked at what lies ahead. You've only looked at what you've been through. Okay? What you've actually been through, how you react, what's been going on, what's influencing you, all those things, right? And now you've got the chance to just sit with that before you start to look ahead. And you can come back to do this at any time, to move ahead, to do the what lies ahead. Okay, what are the patterns of what lies ahead for you? Very, very interesting spread. Now, I will have this for you. So that's it from me. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care. Blessed be.